Welcome to the Lowcountry View of Hilton Head. My name is Earl Yates. I'm your host. Today my guest is going to be Alex Brown. Alex is a longtime friend and also a native islander. We've spent a lot of time together growing up, from kids all the way to adults, and it's just a wonderful thing to see what Alex is doing in the community now. Everything from owning his own businesses to also contributing to all kinds of events and charities throughout the island. And without further ado, Alex Brown. How are we doing, sir?
Great morning. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing very well. So basically, we'll start the way I normally start all the native islanders, basically through the Gullah community. You start, let everyone know how the island was for you growing up, and give us a basic history of who you are.
Well, Earl, you and I both grew up, I guess, a stone's throw away from each other, in what was called the Chaplain area of Hilton Head. And a lot of folks don't know, but Hilton Head, once upon a time, was broken up into what they called plantations. And ours was the Chaplain Plantation. Not quite sure where that name arises from, but I've heard stories of possible slave owners naming it that. And, I grew up on Hilton Head, hard work ethic. Had to go in the field every day after school with my grandfather. It just kind of took me to where I am now. And Hilton Head is a great place. It's known for its beauty and resort atmosphere, but there's a lot of history, a lot of roots here on Hilton Head that are starting to come to light, particularly because of your show.
Well, I'm doing the best I can. I don't know if it's because of my show, but I certainly like to enlighten people as much as I possibly can about how we grew up. I've had the likes of course, Emory Campbell and Louise Miller Cohen on, and that gives certainly a light to what that generation went through.
Sure.
But for us, I always tell people it's the most fortunate time for us to grow up, because back when we were very young, the island was extremely rural.
Sure.
But then our time, that as we are adults now, there's places to go as far as, I would say, for us to build a life for not only ourselves, but our kids, and function as adults. And one of the greatest times I know of is, of course, in Chaplain, growing up, playing basketball and everything. What was, when you look back, what's the greatest period of time on Hilton Head for you?
Well, I'd want to say now, from a business standpoint, because there's so much opportunity here on Hilton Head. But I think growing up, EY, as we went through our high school years, okay, because as a young person, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, you go through things, but you really don't know what you're going through, okay? But as you start to develop into a young adult and going through high school years, is my most I guess learning experience here on Hilton Head, okay? I lost my grandfather going through my high school years there, and didn't really understand what he was teaching me, what my dad was teaching me at a younger age. It really came to light at that point, okay? And, my folks always said, you want to be good to people. And that's gone a long ways, and it didn't start to stick until then. So I think that's probably the most valuable part of my life on Hilton Head. And I wouldn't have learned those things somewhere else, I don't think, If I grew up in some big city, the rat race would have probably been a little too much. I could have been involved in a lot of things that are not good. But growing here in a small area, small community, I think helped me to stay balanced and stay grounded in the forms of understanding people and understanding that you got to be good to people. So I say then was probably my best time on Hilton Head. Well, I'm having a ball now,
yes.
But of course, as far as learning and understanding and developing as a person, those 17, 18, 19-year-old years for me probably were the best.
Well, I mean, of course, later on, you're doing both parts of the show belong to you. So later on, we'll go through some of the things exactly that you're doing for the community now. But one of the most important things I think you're doing for the community, Alex, is I think there's a perception of a lot of people, and definitely those who are visiting the island, that the Gullah community is a very rural part to where the learning probably is not to the same standard of everyone else on the island. And you are probably the greatest example of being just the opposite way. I mean, I can remember even growing up and those high school years, those 17, 18-year-old years when we were going through our little party sections or playing basketball, and always having a certain level of maturity that I always thought was greater than everyone else that was in our group. So it's not a surprise to see how successful you've come. But you look back at our families, and certainly like you said with your grandfather and your father, that's where we took most of our spiritual and work ethics from.
Sure, I agree. I mean, not to bash by any means the youngsters that are coming up now, but it's a totally different arena that they're coming up in. You know, they're involved in a lot of different areas of not just from an academic standpoint, but from a social standpoint. Okay, you know, Hilton Head is a great place. There's a lot to do here. Okay, and a lot of things that maybe you shouldn't be doing here. Okay, and you know, when we came up, it was there, but it wasn't as how do I say, wasn't the norm, okay? And I think that was an advantage to us coming up and not having so many distractions, so to speak, okay? And now, coming from, I guess, a boring Hilton Head back then, okay, to such an exciting Hilton Head now, I think it puts me in a position to help folks, okay, not just adults, but kids also, trying to keep things in balance, okay? And I always tell kids that, you know, don't get caught up in the moment, okay, if that makes sense. Because, you know, what happens now could affect you 10, 20 years from now, okay? Try to push yourself back sometimes and look at it from a different angle. And not just short term, but long term. And I think that's something that I learned here on Hilton Head, and not going away. You know, I went off to school for a year, but I came back. And to be honest with you, I really feel as if I've learned more here at home than I did at school. And I know that's not normal for folks, but it is for me.
Well, Alex, I think that's because you and I have that in common. It's a trend throughout the Native Island community that's very big. I mean, learning not through the academic system, but through what this island had to offer is just unique in itself. I mean, I can remember the days, of course, in your backyard, you know, having the marsh back there that, you know, something that the young kids these days don't participate in like we used to just take off in the marsh, you know, and to go see what's going on. And that was our time spent. We didn't have the Xbox or, you know, the YouTube to go and entertain yourself, jump on the computer. No, we actually went outside, and if you wanted something to do, which you had to have something to do anyway because your parents wasn't going to let you stay in the house for very long anyway. Sure. That's probably one of the greatest experiences on this island is actually learning who you are from a standpoint of a person, not measured against, say, what a rat race in a big city life would do. I mean, we didn't have to deal with a lot of things that most kids had to deal with as growing up because it was completely, like you said, boring or naked.
Sure, sure. The other thing, not just learning about yourself, Earl, but you learned other people, you know? You could understand folks and understand what folks like and what folks don't like and how not to push folks' buttons and so to speak. And you know, that's something that's going away in the new technical world that we live in. But I think it's something that we definitely need to hold on to because I don't see us going to a world or a nation of completely technical. You know, you and I are still going to be flesh and blood. And that's the part that we've got to hold on to. And, you know, here on Hilton Head, here in the Lowcountry, I think you find that more often than you will in other places.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head because that's exactly what it is. I mean, we are still people.
Sure.
And that's what the Lowcountry allows us to still have that bond of person to person. Well, this has been Lowcountry View, of course, the first half, and Alex Brown has been my guest, and he will be my guest for the second half. We'll take a short break, go have a drink, or pick up some more popcorn and come back and visit us. See you in just a little bit.